You ever look at a huge company or, heck, even just a complex gadget and wonder, how does that actually work, right? It can feel like total chaos. But here's the secret. Underneath all of it, there's a hidden logic, a kind of blueprint that brings order to everything. And today, we're going to give you the keys to that blueprint so you can start seeing and maybe even controlling the systems all around you.
All right, let's just jump right in with a bit of a riddle. What on earth could possibly connect a giant corporation, your own body's ability to keep its temperature just right, and that simple little thermostat on your wall? I mean, they seem worlds apart, but the answer is actually way simpler and, honestly, more powerful than you'd think. And once you see the pattern, you're going to start seeing it absolutely everywhere.
So that answer? They're all systems. It's a word we kind of throw around all the time, right? But if you really want to get a handle on a complex process, you have to understand the machine you're dealing with first. So let's start right there.
Now check out this definition. There are two words in here that are absolutely crucial: interrelated and organized. See, a system isn't just a random pile of parts. It's more like a finely tuned engine where every single piece has to work together perfectly with every other piece. It's the organization that unlocks all the power.
So how does this actually work? Well, think of it like a super simple recipe. Every single system needs ingredients. That's your input. Then it follows some instructions to do something with them. That's the process. And finally, you get the finished product, the output. Input, process, output. This simple little flow is the engine behind everything from your morning coffee maker to the entire global economy.
Let's make this crystal clear with that thermostat example. The input, that's the current temperature in the room. The process, it's just comparing that temperature to the goal you set. And the output, a simple signal to turn the heat on or off. See? Simple, elegant, a perfect little system in action. But here's the thing. What if the input is wrong? What if it gets a bad temperature reading? Well, that leads us to our next big idea.
Because here's the catch. You can't just feed any old thing into this engine. You know the saying, garbage in, garbage out? If you want a valuable output, you've got to have a valuable input. And that means we need to get really clear on the difference between two things we mix up all the time: data and information.
So first up, we've got data. Think of data as just the raw materials. It's a long list of sales numbers, or a constant stream of temperature readings. They're just facts, sitting there in a big pile. Yeah, they're objective, but they have no context. They don't tell a story. By themselves, they're pretty much meaningless. But then, when you take that raw data and you process it, that's when you get information. Information is what you get when you turn that pile of random facts into a real story. You give it context, you organize it, and you turn it from just a bunch of noise into a clear signal that lets you actually make a smart decision.
And this table here, it lays out that journey perfectly. Look at the shift. You go from raw facts to organized insights. What starts as a simple, kind of dumb input gets transformed into a meaningful, super useful output. The key thing to see here is that we're basically climbing a ladder of knowledge. Data is just the very first step, but information, that's where the real understanding begins.
And this is why it matters so much. Think about it. A flood of raw data is like 100 people screaming at you at once. It's total chaos. But information? Information is that one clear voice that cuts right through all that noise, points you in the right direction and says, hey, do this. This is what you need to do next.
Okay, so we've got our engine, the system, and we've got our high-quality fuel, the information. But an engine just running on its own doesn't really go anywhere useful, does it? We need a way to steer it. We need a steering wheel. And in the world of systems, that steering wheel is called feedback and control.
Now, this is a really big idea. Control isn't about being some kind of rigid micromanager. No, it's about being more like a pilot. You're constantly looking at your instruments, feeling for any little shifts, and making these tiny constant adjustments to keep the plane flying straight.
And that process of adjusting, it follows this really simple but incredibly powerful four-step loop. You start with a plan, right? Your goal. Then you measure how you're actually doing. Then you compare the two to find the gap. And finally, you take action to close that gap. The crucial part is that this isn't a one-and-done deal. It's a continuous cycle, always running, always refining, and always keeping the system right on target.
Let's go back to our trusty thermostat. Just think about how elegant that is. The planning, collecting, comparing, and correcting, it all happens automatically, probably hundreds of times a day, with zero help from you. It's a perfect, self-regulating little machine, constantly steering itself toward the goal you gave it.
Okay, so we've got all the pieces on the table, the system, the information, and that feedback loop. Now it's time to put it all together. Let's see what this whole machine looks like when it's running a massive real-world organization.
You know, every modern business relies on a sort of central nervous system to keep an eye on its health and to make decisions. In the financial world, this blueprint we've been building has a specific name. It's called an Accounting Information System, or an AIS for short. This is the real-world machine that brings all these abstract ideas to life.
And just look at its main jobs. Does it sound familiar? It should. It's our entire model in action. First, it collects all the raw financial data. That's our input. Then it processes that data into reports and forecasts. That's our valuable information. And finally, it has controls built right in to make sure everything is accurate. That's our feedback, our steering wheel. It's the whole shebang.
And honestly, this is the most important thing to walk away with today. These aren't just fancy business school terms. This whole framework, system, information, control, it's a universal toolkit. It's a mental model you can apply to literally any goal you have, whether you're trying to build a company, train for a marathon, or even just get your personal budget under control.
So, I'm going to leave you with this question. Now that you can see this simple pattern, the engine of input, process, output, and the steering wheel of plan, measure, compare, correct, what's one system, just one, in your own life that you could make better right now with just a little more control and a little better feedback?